I've asked Councilman Clough if he will give us our invocation, and Councilman Ivy if he will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear Father in heaven, we are grateful this day for an opportunity to come and discuss the affairs and needs of Washington City. We pray at this time that we'll be mindful of the rights that have been granted unto us, that we'll act within both our rights as citizens and elected officials on behalf of the great intentions of this country, the United States of America. We pray that we may have thy spirit and thine approval in all that we do. Help us to have the humility to hear each other out, both as citizens and as staff and elected officials, that we may come up with the best possible solution for our citizens at large. We pray that we will be ever mindful of the sacrifices of those who have given their lives, both in service in our military and those who have dedicated their lives and professions to the benefits of our city on behalf of every citizen. Pray thy wisdom and oversight in this meeting, that all that is necessary to be done will be done. In the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Will you please stand? Repeat after me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. I'll entertain a motion to approve our agenda for this evening.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Item 2, announcements. Councilman Clough, will you do a pre-announcement on our Cotton Days celebration?
Yes, our Cotton Day celebration is coming up here soon. There is a lot of announcements that we're working with the city and everyone else to distribute this through social media. We'll have banners coming up soon. We really look forward to a lot of participation in this. Please, any way that you can reach out to the community and let them know, we'd really appreciate it. There are a lot of good moves that we're making as a council, I think, to make that happen. So please come. It'll be fun.
Did you give us the dates?
Oh, geez.
I can give those.
Yeah,
I've got them pulled up here, Councilman. I know you're involved. If you don't mind, I'll tell you just from the website here. It's on WashingtonCity.org.
Right.
The Junior Rodeo, April
this
21st
Yeah.
at 5 p.m. Movie in the Park, April 24th at 6 p.m. Historical Society Night, April 24th at 6 p.m. Those last two are both at Veterans Park. The Lions Club Breakfast is April 25th at Veterans Park at 7 a.m. The Cotton Days 5K is April 25th at 7 a.m. down at Sullivan Soccer Park. The parade for Cotton Days is along the parade route on Telegraph. It's April 25th at 9 a.m. And there are registrations on the website for the parade and also for the Junior Rodeo, which has been very, very popular. And also another tradition in Washington that has to do with Cotton Days. Well, a few other traditions. On April 25th, on that Saturday at 10 a.m. is the car show. At 11 a.m. is the tractor pull. We love our tractors here in Washington. On Sunday the 26th at the Historical Museum here next door, there will be a fireside with a special guest presenter. And then on May 2nd at 7 a.m., the council and mayor will be doing the Ironman Pancake Breakfast, and we'll be on the corner of North Main and Buena Vista. Free pancakes, all you can eat. Well, at least till the batter runs out, but plenty of pancakes for most people.
For the cooks right now.
So there's a lot going on. What I would say to those watching or reading this is just to go to the website and search for Cotton Days. It'll give you all the details.
Correct.
And we really appreciate our community, all the volunteers. As a city, as a council, as a staff, we really want to be supportive and we want this to continue to be a success. I mean, Washington City's been around since 1857, and this is our celebration for our history and our heritage. And while we're growing, this is a way for the community to come together and just really have a variety of events that are just fun and make it a great place to be.
Thank you very much. Also, just FYI, we will be starting our bus system fairly shortly, within almost a week or two, right?
No, we're a week or more close.
So very close. So we're excited to have that come into our city. Just to let you know, ladies and gentlemen. We'll move on to item 3, declaration of abstentions and conflicts. Any to declare at this time? Now we'll move on. Our consent agenda to approve the minutes from the city council meetings of 2/26/20, and our to consideration to approve the board audit report for February 2020, and a consideration to approve the final plat for the Burgoyne minor subdivision located at approximately 2540 East Washington Dam Road, applicant Kyle and Tracy Burgoyne.
Mayor, if I can, just pull out on the final plat of the Burgoyne. Had a question for Drew. During the planning commission, there was a condition for the sewer easement that run across the property, and I didn't see it on the plat.
I apologize. We have the updated plat, and we'll make sure that's on there. So it's one of the checklists.
And I didn't
So,
see it in a condition, so I think if we do, I want to
in
make.
fact, I think the plat's sitting on my desk itself, and I'm pretty sure that I've seen that it's on there. So,
Okay.
but I'm glad you made note of that. We'll make sure that double check that's on there, that sewer easement. So,
Can you help me understand the flood zone area? Flood zone AE and BFE?
BFE's base flood elevation.
Okay.
that's where the water runs through when the rains come down.
That's just the zoning is just a regulation of what type of house.
Yeah, FEMA puts out a map, Councilman.
That's how they zone it.
FEMA has its maps, and we make sure that we have them on our plats, just so that anybody buying on that plat is aware of those. That part of it could be in the FEMA floodplain. So,
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. We approve the consent agenda for the items Mayor presented with the additional condition for item C of the final plat to have a sewer easement through the property for the future sewer line.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote.
Staley, aye.
Clough, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Ward, aye.
Coates, aye.
Thank you very much. Those are all approved. Item 5, public hearings. Public hearing for consideration to approve a general plan amendment, G-20-02, requesting to change the land use designation from community commercial to planned unit development residential, PDR. Property is located the northeast corner of 1100 East and Telegraph Street, applicant Red Vista Development of Orem, LLC.
thank you, Mayor. As stated, the applicant is seeking approval to amend the general plan land use map. The requested area covers 3.69 acres. The current land use designation is community commercial. The applicant is seeking approval to have the land use designation changed to the planned unit development for the possibility to develop the area into a future multifamily condominium project. The surrounding general plan use designations are high-density residential to the north and community commercial to the east, south, and west. As stated, the applicant is wishing for this to, again, turn this property that you see in the exhibit here at that corner into a condo multifamily development. They presented to you in I think a work session in the last month or two and talked about with that, trying to bring it in as an affordable housing development as well. And they explained all those issues for you at that time. Staff reviewed the requested change, finds no major problems with the request from the community commercial to the PUD, other than the fact that the city will be losing possible future development and retail sales tax space at this location. But staff will make note that developers proposing something that, again, as I stated, could be one of our first and more heavily offered affordable housing developments, which is one of the buzzwords throughout the state of Utah, as we all know. If you listen to especially our state legislators talk this time of year, that's been one of the hot topics about affordable housing. The Planning Commission reviewed the request at their February 19th, 2020 meeting, held the public hearing, and the Planning Commission after that hearing by a vote of 4-1 recommended approval of G-20-02 to amend the general plan use map from the current community commercial designation to a proposed plan unit development residential designation as part of the general plan. And of course, that was on to you, the city council. I'll be glad to answer any questions that the council might have relating to this project.
So is the project proposed for the entire plot that's shown there in?
It is all so the area, there's 3 different parcels on it.
Yeah.
And they own all 3 of them again now. At one point they didn't. The corner wasn't part of it, but now all 3 areas, and that adds up to the 3.69 acres. So it's that whole brownish area that you see there will be part of this project.
And are the roadways going to remain intact there? I guess it's subject to the development and plan, right?
Yes, and the proposed site plan that I've seen, just a draft version, shows that road still coming through from Bristol Park, and also on to these. Again, you already have in place the curb cuts, et cetera, here. That will all remain part of that, and even on the west side there, they've made their design to kind of compensate for each of those.
So Drew, with this going to PUD residential, is there any possibility to do a small kiosk of commercial in that PUD zone or no? Because it is a PUD.
You could, and that's why, sometimes we haven't been, I didn't purposefully, when we did the general plan change to allow PUDs, I didn't put R or C in it. And in this case, you could leave it that way. I think one time we added it to it, but it was specifically because that's what it was going to be, commercial. If you remember the piece that we talked about, that, well, actually it'll be coming to you as a zone change soon. But when you did the general plan amendment, we left it that you stated you wanted it PUDC for those storage units, if you remember, on 3650. This one, if you wanted to leave an open door, then I would just say don't put the PUDR, just leave it as PUD, and then they can come back in their zone request and ask for either or.
Drew, how many units per acre does this work out to?
Well, I don't know, because we're not really talking about their project yet. We're really not supposed to, put that in, but it will be high, I can tell you, but I'm not specific on it
Maybe
yet.
a better way to get an answer for what Councilman Ivy is asking is, if it is general planned PUD and they ask for a PUD residential, what would be the dwelling units per acre associated with that future zoning?
It's still, well, I can just say this, depending probably on the project and being multifamily, because, and I'm not trying to skate out. I have
I'm open for you not to answer that.
Yeah, to be honest, what it could be is 7 to 16, because I have a 7 to 12 and a.
But really, couldn't it be? I mean, they may come back with something less than that, something within that range, or something
or
higher than that, and that's really at the discretion of this council based on the project.
And within our PUD, we also allowed for the new council. Well, one of them will, because he was part of it. But you two may not. When they developed the new PUD, we allowed for actually increases in density by doing some things, that you would put in, almost like the bonus density. You're familiar with
Yes.
that one. In our PUD, we kind of threw some of those options in to allow them to maybe do a little bit more. But I'm glad you said it the way you did. The council always has the discretion, depending on, again, and I think it should be, what is the benefit to the community based on the density they're allowing. You as the council can determine, you can go above your density based on a good reason for it.
But
And this would be the affordable housing thing you might look at.
So to touch base on that, the PUD, sorry, I keep saying PCD.
That's fine.
PUD is, but the offsets were based on what the current general plan had. And if the current general plan is PUD, how do we offset that? How do we regulate that in that aspect? Because in examples, one of them that came up was it was low density. So it based on a percentage on the low density was how many additional units they were able to get on the PUD.
Right.
So what do we do in the case where it's a PUD general plan? Because we've never gone through, I haven't gone through this where we're making a PUD, and then when they come in for their zone, how do we set up those additional benefits? So that's my question to you, because
as you stated, for those who don't know, before we had that underlying, or what it used to be, or even with a PUD, when they come in, well, I go to my general plan and say, well, the underlying general plan says the density right here is this.
Yeah.
And when we redid the general plan to add the PUD, we talked about that, and it was best that we left that open. And we were going to take it on a case by case, depending on location, makes a big difference. If I wasn't on two major, because 1100 East is planned to be a major road as well, Telegraph's a major road, I think my densities can be greater on those two roads. If I was on two residential streets, I'd maybe not want my densities to be as high. So I would refer back to what is my highest density allowable in the city. 16 right now is. But I also have references to a couple of PCDs that have 20 and 22. So you can use that as part of your reference. Feel free to use what you've approved in other places based on, again, you always have that discretion to be able to do that. Again, depending on the location, depending on, again, the benefits that come from that project, do we want to go higher? Those are things you can weigh out at that zoning change time when you get to that point. So, but I appreciate the question, but I would right now say I would divert back. My highest in a multifamily is 16 dwelling units per acre.
Okay.
As my starting point, I guess would be.
I just want to be clear, because I just don't want to open, if there's a hole in our ordinance, how do we fix that? If there is a hole, but you're saying 16 is the limit, but if we're saying 16 plus 25%, all of a sudden we're clear up into the 22s.
Right. And that's where you, again, because of PUDs are negotiating zoning. And so if the city gets a benefit out of that, you can offset benefits that the developer's offering you to grant either density or whatever, and mostly it's density.
I think the thing that I'm worried about, I just don't want to think the developers think they get that 25%, because it does say in our language, it's the discretion of the council.
That's right.
They're not guaranteed that. It's just they can ask for it, doesn't mean they'll get it.
And then you keep asking, what is the benefit to us and why should we go to that? And if it's a fair, trade-off, then that's what you do.
I guess within this, one of the concerns I have to bring before the council, I've read through everything and I'm looking at this. This is a really unique thing to consider, the function of how this change would change the entrance into our city. We're taking a piece of property that's now community commercial, great place, great exposure for that type of a zoning within our city, and considering changing it to a place where it'd be heavy residential next to two very, very busy arteries. It's a very significant change, and chances are it will be a higher density than what is common within our city. There's a lot of things that make me very nervous about changing the function of this particular zoning with this property due to just safety concerns and also the lack of commercial that we have on Telegraph. Having an extreme amount of traffic passing through this area, it makes more sense to make a commercial type of a setup than to change its zoning into any type of a residential setup. But that's just my feelings. I just wanted to bring forward council.
Any additional comments or questions for Drew? Do you have any comments or questions for the developer this time? Okay. Public hearing. Any of you out there that have an interest in this, come on up and state your name and
Fellow council, I'm John Olsen. I'm a local hotelier here in town. And I feel like this would be a great project for you to approve because, there's no affordable housing for my staff at my hotels to be able to get into a condo like this and have a house payment versus renting. And because it's a FHA, it would be more feasible for them to be able to get into one of these condos, if it's approved. So I just highly recommend that you look at it and give it your best interest, okay?
John, do you mind if I just ask you a question while you're up here? You say that, so you're in the hotel business and you have several employees. How difficult is it for them to find affordable housing to get into a place of their own?
None of them can get a house again, get into a house right now because unfortunately the lodging doesn't pay that well. But it pays about $15 an hour, but they can get approved for a loan with making that kind of money for hourly wage. Yeah. And that's my housekeepers to my front desk to my maintenance man. I mean, they're all would love to. And they all live here in Washington, but they're renting and they are not owning, and they're wanting to have the ability to have ownership. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Any additional questions for John? Thank you, John. Good to see you. Anybody else?
Sherry Tate. I just have a question. Do we know for a fact it would be affordable housing, or is this for a fact that it would be?
There would have to be a deed restriction, in my mind.
The developer is actually proposing that this would have an FHA loan component that would help individuals to get into houses. So we've had a little bit of discussion with the developer on this, and it's really the first. We've had a number of developers come into the city and propose affordable housing. This is the first developer we've had come in who has affordable housing with a component that actually helps people get into homes, and it would be the FHA. Am I saying that right? FHA loan thing.
And just to add on to what Councilman Ward was saying is, this is a property that and again, we're right at only the general plan phase, so we're kind of high on the funnel of how this process goes. But from the when the developer, this applicant scheduled in a workshop session about a month or so ago and presented some of their ideas about the property, and we said bring it back through the process. We wanted to go through the right process, but at the time, some of the things that they shared with us is that he's owned this property for a number of years, and he just hasn't had any calls for commercial. And so they're thinking, what can we do that's a benefit to the community? And that's why they're coming through the process, presenting for this general plan amendment that would potentially, obviously if they get the PUD residential, that can do a number of things. But from that last open meeting when they presented to us, the idea that they have for this piece would be to have it be affordable, attainable type housing.
Okay, because my concern would be and I don't mean to offend anybody, I do it quite often, but would be that it's not a sales pitch to get the property switched over to this. That would be my concern. And I really think about what Councilman Clef said in Exit 13 and all that, how that's developed. And I know that there's some other commercial coming in. And so I'm like, we really need business. And I know you can't tell people what to do, but I think, maybe now is the time that it could still be used as commercial, and we don't know what the Turners are going to do at the turf farm. And, so I think as long as it's a guarantee that, we need affordable housing, I completely agree with that. But I've seen things approved for something and then pretty soon here comes something else in. So that would be my concern, to make sure we look at what's coming in, because we have all those apartments and homes all on that end of town, and that's our entrance, and we do need to have a really grand entrance. I'm all about the grand entrance. So thank you.
That's another reason why we kind of lean towards the PUD. It gives the council the opportunity to work with the developer and kind of have this larger discussion about how this rolls forward rather than straight zoning. So it'll be a unique project. I'm excited to see how it unfolds.
Hi, my name is Bruce Dickerson. I'm the developer. And what I'm willing to put all this in writing, development agreement, to guarantee you that it's affordable housing. So it'll be spelled out before we move for you to change any kind of zoning. It's put it in the development agreement. It'll be FHA approved and it'll be affordable housing. And I'll put it in writing.
Thank you, Bruce.
And we appreciate that offer. I think that Sherry makes a good point, which I think you all recognize, as well as the developer making points about what the future is going to be in locking things in. Yes, when we have a zone change, when we do it in the general plan, no guarantee, once the zone gets there, it's going to build as you, it can then build under what scenario fits within our zoning schedule. If it comes as a PUD, the nice thing about it is at one stage earlier, you can start locking in what that development is going to be, which would be the next stage, if it's a PUD, because you lock in subdivision, whatever the development is going to be at that point, as opposed to waiting for another stage to come back. So, but to get to this question, even though it's a great offer, and we'd be happy to hold you to that offer, the reality is that we can't contract a zone at this part, at this stage of it. When we get to this stage, we're changed, so the general plan allowed it for someone to bring in a specific PUD plan that fit with it. Council would then have all the opportunity, wanted to lock in whether or not that's going to be affordable housing, lock in other aspects of that, because it's a locked-in development at that point. At this stage, we really don't have a tool in our belt that we contract that the general plan will change. This is because you may not be the one that does develop. You may say you're going to, but if you run out of money, the citizens can't come back and sue you because you didn't go forward at this stage just because it got approved on the general plan. The city can't sue you with no money to make you put a project that you're not going to put in.
So help me understand. So this is just saying that we're going to consider a zone change down the road.
No, this is a general plan amendment. So it's the first step. We have to do a general plan amendment and then a zoning change.
So you're still protected, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, you wouldn't, Sherry makes a good point. However, though, if it gets changed on the general plan, it would still be, it's still right at that point in time, it would still be zoned commercial, because it's zoned commercial now, right, Drew?
It's zone commercial right now, it's C2, but that's the thing about keeping it straight PUD in the general plan. We can still go commercial or residential.
And
That's the thing. So we're not giving up the commercial. I mean, we may be in the long run, but if, again, as stated, who knows what happens tomorrow, the next person could still come in with a PUD commercial or a PUD residential, but that's all they could bring into you. And it is a consideration still. There are always considerations until it's a locked in plan. You know, this just allows us to apply for a certain zone change is what a general plan does.
And I've only owned the ground for 14 years and I've tried to develop it commercially.
Now you own all 3.69 acres.
I own it
that
all.
Entire 14-year process?
Well, I owned it for 5 or 6 years at first, sold the corner to a gentleman who was going to put commercial in there. It went to bankruptcy. It went back to the bank and I bought it back from someone bought it out of the bank at a trustee sale, and I've since bought it from him.
And
so he tried to do the corner
time?
and do something commercially, and he lost it to the bank.
Right.
So I'm going to say this one caveat. I know you've owned it for a long time, but we have how many apartments going in down the street?
These aren't apartments. These are condos.
No, I'm saying just how many apartments do we have? We have a whole bunch that aren't on.
And I hope
yet.
to get them all to come into mine and buy them. That's what I want. So if you think they're apartments, that's not what they are.
No, I'm not. I think you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that I'm looking at this as, yeah, commercial might not have worked for the past 15 years, but it might work now.
I'll sell it to you.
If you can sell it to me cheap, we might be able to do that. I don't make that much money. So
everything I have is for sale. I understand.
I'm just making a point that we have lots of apartments, one block down, coming online in the near 6 months. I'm just making that statement out there.
And the only other thing that I'd like to say is that I've done this for 45 years and I've brought affordable housing to people in this FHA program. And I know that you know this from my work session that I talked to you, that this is not my first rodeo, and what I want to do is help bring for people like him. And I have some people here that I've got waiting lists right now for people that want to buy units that live here in Washington. So what it's worth.
Thank you, Bruce.
You bet.
Anybody else?
Ben Willits. I am a consultant to the applicant, and I wanted to just bring up a few points in our research for this, and just so that I think a lot of people are aware of what the issue is as far as the lack of affordable housing, but I don't think a lot of people understand the process. And as Councilman Clough brought up, it is one of those things that's hard to grapple with many times, to lose a commercial piece, but you don't look at it as losing a commercial piece, but gaining a component that is much needed and does not exist right now in the southern Utah area. I've worked for over 20 years all over the West in doing land planning and land use planning and site development. And what happens is that affordable type housing doesn't come online until it has to, until it becomes a squeeze, and until it becomes a Band-Aid. And then what happens is it ends up going in places that we don't want it to go. Now, if we look at this on a big scale, and as Drew brought up a good point, these kind of projects aren't going to go in around a residential neighborhood. They just are not. And we all know that if you were to come in here and try to put this in adjacent to any sort of residential neighborhood, unless it was a medium high density, the neighbors have a fit. And I get it. I understand. I live in a neighborhood that we have USDA housing just down the street, and there's issues that come. This is not a subsidized housing that we're talking about. It's workforce attainable housing, FHA approved, and there's a big difference in where these types of parcels go that makes sense. We had quite a few discussions with Matt Liu, as many of you know, is the Economic Development Director, and with his permission, we're just sharing a few things with him. One of these things is these small parcels, we end up stepping over a dollar to pick up a dime. And so the dime being the small piece, the small commercial piece here, that what goes there because 8,000 new jobs are being created on exit 13. So who's the commercial guy? And Councilman Coates, I 100% agree with what you're saying, but the person who has to go try and getting a loan on this from a commercial standpoint can't do it, because then they go look and see what the demographic is of all the new commercial that's going in. It's all going on exit 13. And so that makes these kind of parcels extremely difficult to come in and develop from a commercial standpoint and from a realistic standpoint, unless somebody has cash, and that's extremely rare. So with that, last year, there was a State Bill 34, Affordable Housing Act, that was passed in the legislature, and I'm just going to share a couple minor components of that also reflect and are mirrored in actually the Washington City Affordable Housing Plan. And some of those are for rezoning for densities that are necessary to assure that you're getting an affordable housing product. So zoning is key, and people don't understand that if the zoning isn't there, and we can see what has happened over time, is we keep sprawling with the same product. And if we keep sprawling with the same product, that only is fitting about a 20% niche in the market. We're at about an 80% upside down flop right now of who can afford a house, all throughout the state, all throughout the West, and it's growing and growing. Another component is for encouraging higher densities to allow for moderate income residential areas to develop, allowing for the implementation of this zoning to have also incentives for low to moderate income. And now this portion is actually coming straight out of the 2017 Washington City Affordable Housing Plan. And these are quotes straight out of it. One of them is increase the opportunities for low to moderate income households by reviewing its zoning ordinances and policies to ensure that there is adequate opportunity to develop an adequate supply of various housing types throughout the city's diverse socioeconomic needs. Recently, the state just updated their again, affordable housing outlook. And as of right now, there's 41% of the residents in Washington County who cannot afford the 80% adjusted median level income of a home. So there's over 40% of the population who cannot afford the very basic home to buy, and this isn't even to rent. Another component, again, out of the Washington City Affordable Housing Plan is there are 3 strategies that are outlined. One, saying promote a first-time homebuyer down payment assistance program. Again, through FHA, that is accomplished because they're able to come in with as little as $1,000 down, and that money can be gifted. Number 2 strategy is offer incentives to the developer to attain affordable housing and low-to-income housing by expanding zones and adding density bonuses, back to Councilman Coates's reasoning of having that bonus density. And again, what you find, and we don't need to get into the nitty-gritty on these, but when you have that bonus density with a denser product, you're able to congregate the density of the housing such that you're able to get more open space because you don't have to spread it out in order to get that density. And strategy number 3 is to then have inventory of infill sites to consider for rezoning that may be appropriate to develop condominiums or other higher density housing that is harmonious with the surrounding neighborhood. Again, perfect example right here, and this is right out of your own city's affordable housing plan. So I just wanted to share some of those things that we need to take into consideration as we look at the big picture and as we look at how are we going to achieve what the goals and strategies are in the city's own affordable housing plan. It's challenging, it is, but sites like this, I think, are perfect examples of how that can be achieved, and then how they can now support what that huge demand of new jobs are going to be just up the street off exit 13. So I won't bore you with more statistics. I figured those are some good ones, though, but we just a lot of times don't realize what some of those important strategies are that we can do. And if we don't, then we end up having to put these kind of projects in areas we don't want them if we don't plan for them now. So,
Hey, Ben, and again, I don't want to get ahead of the game here, but has your group done projects like this elsewhere, and has it been successful?
Yeah,
filling that niche for attainable, affordable housing.
Mm-hmm. We have, and again, most of them though have been Band-Aids, and you end up having, the problem is when you do a Band-Aid project, as we call it, it's one that's kind of a force fit. You end up having to have a lot more concessions on a project that's a Band-Aid, and there's a lot more items that you end up having to look for that end up becoming not as desirable in order to pull off that project because it is a Band-Aid. And, as I look just recently, and this isn't in any way to disparage St. George, but we're looking at another parcel there, and I started to look in St. George's general plan, and there are zero right now areas for high density housing other than apartments. Now, they have some on their general plan that are on the fringes of the city, but those are so far out that it's not going to be able to fulfill a need in the near future. And so far out, meaning we're talking about in the middle of the Southern Parkway where there's nothing right now, or out on the very far west end of St. George and, on the border of Santa Clara and the West Hills. I mean, so part of that is, we can play lip service to say, well, we're planning it, but it's so far out there that it's not going to meet a need anytime soon. So, yes, whoa, Bruce is kind of got a good balance here.
Almost makes you feel like you got something to say.
He's got something to say.
No,
He doesn't want him to say anymore.
I just got ADHD, so what can I say? Yes, the answer is yes. I've developed like 500 of these in the last 4 years. And I can tell you straight on that 90% of the people that buy these are young marrieds. And in 5 years, I went back and looked at it, and maybe 16 of them have moved. They end up being there because there's only 2-bedroom, 1 bath. They're not built for rentals. They're built for young families to buy, and they usually stay for a longer time. They don't move on. So that's all I want to say. If he wants to keep going, he can.
Well, I just have one question for you.
Me or him?
The gentleman with the glasses. Ben, I don't really want to talk about densities, but your partner brought up a good point. Those are going to be units that are going to be, families are going to live in. There's going to be kids there. Mm-hmm. And the surroundings of that. There's busy roads on 2 sides, and there's not really a huge area for them, for the young children to play. Could you bring this forward if it works out and you decide to do it? The amenities for those children is going to be very important for me to see. They need to be able to, not only live there, but have things to do and, those type of things. Just
Sure. Yeah, and that's, again, good planning doesn't have to be expensive either. Affordable doesn't mean now you strip it down to the bare bones. And so part of the FHA process is they hold your feet to the fire on having a certain amount of amenities. And it's not just, hey, here's a little gravel tot lot that has a teeter-totter on it. So they are very adamant that, and part of that process of getting that FHA designation is that you have to have a certain amount of open space, and it has to be usable. It can't just be, a dog park to take your dog out and do his business in and then walk away. So these are, that is something that every one of these projects we do look at, and they all have components of that. Again, without getting into too much of that detail, but that is part of the process of planning these appropriately and for that right buyer and for that right demographic. And we know that most of these end up in places that aren't in the middle of a calm, tranquil residential neighborhood, because those residents would never let one of these projects in the middle of their calm, tranquil residential neighborhood. So they end up being on the fringes, unfortunately. But that's where the planning of the amenity sites becomes crucial. And we're actually able to get, again, back to Councilman Coates' point of, we actually end up getting more open space than the minimum requirement is because we're able to go higher. We don't have to sprawl the thing out.
vertical is cheaper.
Well, it's not cheap. It's cheaper, one, yes, but it's also more efficient from a land plan as well. But we have to build it vertical in order to get that attainable workforce housing dollar to that point. So yes, again, the way prices are in this area, you cannot build an affordable unit and be at a 5,000 square foot lot.
Well, I'm perfectly fine in pursuing concepts of affordable housing, but I refuse to sacrifice safety. So I would be very concerned not only for the open space, but for the entrances, for the parking, for the walkways. It would be very scrutinized if this were to shift to a PUD, to a residential, because there are so many dynamics with this property. Great. If you reduce parking and people are scooting around, kids around and everything, I'm not up for decreasing our safety regardless of the value of its commodity. Safety is a primary emphasis within our community and its function. So I know we're talking about just a zone change tonight, and that's up to the council. But
Well, general plan and zone change comes next.
Correct.
So that's where we get into the nitty gritty of where the open space is, how it's contained,
Right.
how much it is. But that, again, that is something that we definitely are aware of and are cognizant of, and that
as long as it's built within our standards, we're welcome to see what you have.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Mayor, do you mind if I ask
One
one more
more.
question? And you or whoever you feel like is the best one to answer this, but I just pulled out my notes from when you presented to the council. And so if you are granted the general plan amendment and came forward again for a zone change, the notes that I have from our last visit is that you would be very aware of parking, very aware of density, very aware of CCNRs. And I want you just to briefly address your level of commitment to two other things that you mentioned. One being deed restrictions, which would require as a deed transfers that 60% ownership, owner occupied residents live in these condos. So they don't become rental units. They become owner occupied attainable housing. And two, to offset, we have competing needs to the city, right? On the one hand, we have desire to increase our commercial growth, but we also have a desire to care for those who are trying to get into homeownership. So the last thing that you said could maybe offset some of those commercial, tax revenue to the city would be a transfer fee on sales. Are you still committed to deed restrictions and transfer fees?
Yes, all the above. Okay. And that's something that the transfer fee is unique, more to here. Typically, we're not having to do that because the need is so great to have the units at a truly affordable rate. And so, but given the nature of the commercial site, we're aware that that is an issue. And yes, that is something that we're willing to, as we move forward, to have that. And that becomes a bit more creative, and obviously with with council's approval, that has to be something that we have to look carefully at how it gets crafted. But yes, on that, the deed restriction.
But all of these are on the table.
Correct.
For future, okay.
Yes,
Great.
deed restriction, absolutely. FHA, in fact, requires a minimum of 50% owner occupied. We're willing to go to minimum of 60, 60-40, a 60% owner occupancy ratio. And so with that deed restriction HOA, absolutely, we have a very strict HOA CCNRs and guidelines that are put in place with an on-site manager that oversees those. And what that all does is it preserves the integrity of the project. And moving forward for those who may come in afterwards, it still has that FHA designation on it. So as long as it maintains in that 60-40 range or in the minimum 50-50 from the FHA standpoint, not from the deed restriction that would be in place on this, then that FHA designation can then continue on in perpetuity. So
Thank you. Thank you, Ben. Any additional questions? Okay. Anybody else?
I just got one thing for you, Mayor. It was mentioned about being our front door, at least one side, and something maybe we can talk about another date is how we deal with Telegraph Street moving forward.
Good point.
So just a note that I'd someday like it on a work session to talk about future look of Telegraph moving forward.
Thank you.
I'm Brady Dushare. I'm one of the developers. One last thing we wanted to point out, we know there are apartments going in. We don't have problems with apartments. I manage apartments. I got no problem. I just know that what happens with apartments is that it's out of state money that built it, and then the rent shoots right out of state. And except for the people shopping here, it's not as much of a benefit to the city as we think just because they're living here. We know the one that's up by Hellhole I think they're trying to cater to, and they've been trying to make a deal, and we talked it over with Matt Liu. They were talking about catering to people who have incomes down, and they're trying to get tax breaks if they can cater to people who make $44,000 a year. And we're saying, buying one of our condos, not just renting, buying one of our condos and owning and gaining equity, paying down your mortgage, you can afford one of these for $25,000 a year. You can make $15 an hour and still buy one of these. That's what the kids I'm selling to. I'm the one selling up in the other projects. And we have kids that are coming in barely married, 18 and 19 years old, just got married. They both go to school. They both work. Between them, they make $15 an hour. And that's who's buying up there and living there and gaining equity. And so it's our argument has been and still is, we understand it's commercial. We're bending over backwards with that transfer fee that we're floating. We're still willing to do that because we said that, but we think that the benefit to the city of having kids living here in your city that are able to work locally, all the stuff that's going in, the auto mall and the hospital and everything that's going in is going to need staff. And here's 84 places where they can live. It's not, well, we won't talk density yet, but here's a place where they can live. And we're going to meet or exceed the parking, meet or exceed the landscaping. We're going to meet building height. We're meeting everything that is currently in the code. And so this isn't going to be something that we present to you that's like, oh my goodness, what are these guys doing? It's going to be a benefit. Yeah, we have two in Orem. One is right down by UVU, and it's right on I-15. It's called Running Horse Condos. The other one is Villa d'Este, D''Este. I believe it's a golf course. It's Villa D''Este. Right? A resort in Italy? Okay.
I know that one.
Okay. There's another one. We're building one in Provo called Spring Creek. We're building one in Springville called Fox Ridge. And anyway, and so Orem's concern was, this is just down from UVU. This is going to be nothing but rentals. And the Orem mayor has actually written a letter that we will probably produce to you next time that just says, I was wrong. This was fantastic. It's full of owners. It's full of kids that couldn't live anywhere else. Please build more of these. And so, yeah, exactly the same as this. And so, in fact, I mean, the inside of these, when people are calling because we have a sign up in our project in Hurricane, I send them the 3D tour of our project in Orem because it's going to be exactly like that. It's 2-bed, 1-bath, solid surface countertops, great project that they can come in and live.
Those all maintain 50% ownership?
Yes, that's an FHA thing. In Provo, we went 60 because they were concerned, just like here, they were concerned, we want more owners than that, so we went 60 in Provo. But 50-50 is the FHA requirement. We went higher, we're willing to go higher here just because it's, when people are buying right now, small investors are also getting pushed out of the market. And so we have 6, right now we have 4 buildings in Provo. We have 6 that we can give to investors because of the 60%. And we are maxed out on the building 1 and maxed out on building 2. And so we've shut down no more investors because we haven't started selling building 3 and 4 yet. But it's owner after owner that's calling right now. And so building 1 is like 2 left, I think. And building 2, we just started selling and we've only got 3 or 4 in there. And so I'm the one that's meeting with the kids and I'm amazed every time I'm sitting down with these kids going, you guys are so smart. And they're talking to me. I just rented my basement apartment. That's a 1-bed, tiny little place for $825. And these kids, after they put down their down payment, are going to be paying $950 for a place that they own. That's 950 feet. And I'm going, I'm so smart. You guys are doing the right thing here. And it's just, they're coming out of the woodwork. And the only advertising that we have right now are a sign on the property that they can lead them to a website and my phone number. And I cannot stay out of the model home because so many phone calls to sell these places. We can't keep up. And that's there. Here you have a bigger you have a bigger problem here than they have up there. There's some product up there. None of it's FHA, but down here you have nothing. You have nothing down here.
So what type of area are you locating your product in Utah County?
Good question. The Juan Villa de Este is next to a Winco commercial area. Next to a Winco, there's a multifamily project that's next to the Winco, but we are along 1200 West by that Winco on 800 North. The one Running Horse is right on I-15, total commercial area. And Orem just went, you got it. It's right where it is. Provo is, you're right, UBView, yeah. That one is just, there's Walmart, the video that we have is, you can see it from I-15. And when we mentioned it, oh, that's the one by I-15. It's in between 1200 or Sand Hill Road and I-15. And then Provo is right on State Street. And Springville was an old school, and it's right on State Street. So every one of these is exactly the same situation where we try to put it in a residential area. This place is filled with people who are, no, they're in my traffic. We put it in a commercial area, then it's, oh, commercial. But eventually they go, this is a far greater benefit to the city. Level 3 is not going to produce the kind of tax that's going to make a difference to the city as having kids that are living here are going to make. And that's what our argument is.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else? I'll entertain a motion.
Pape, Olsen. I'll make it quick. Councilman Coates, when you brought up the density, right? The thought process on that when we did it was that at the general plan, we'd kind of identify it if you wanted to, or leave it open for the council when it came before the council. If you remember when we did Sunrise Valley, by motion, we kept the density and that was identified. And then the PD commercial that went in on, or was approved on 3650 South, which said PD commercial or just PUD, leave it where it is. With respect to this project, I don't really have an issue if it's multifamily or commercial. I don't, with the project I have going across the street, I don't feel threatened by it, right? So it's not a problem. But I think it's fair to say that density does add revenue to the city through the additional property tax collection that offsets the loss of the sales tax, right? It also adds additional commercial demand for those areas. And I can tell you, for the stuff we're doing on exit 13, they still think that we don't have enough density in the area. So there is that offset.
The challenge that I have with this project, and Councilman Staley, you brought it up, was the transfer fee. And I've said this for a long time. I got two challenges with it. One is, to me, it feels like buying your zoning. And I don't think, in my mind, that's a precedent that the city ought to set. Either it's a good project for the city or it's a bad project for the city. But if you look at it and say, well, geez, we're going to get this additional revenue because of this transfer fee, I think it's buying zoning. It doesn't sit well with me. I know that I was here in the workshop when they came through and were discussing, the parking, because that's why it was brought up, because there was reduced parking in that. And if the thought process is, well, this transfer fee makes it so that we need to do that reduced parking. But if that's the case, just go through the ordinance, create a menu list of exemptions in the code that I can come in, or the zoning that I can buy. Let me know what that is and I'll perform it into future projects, right? So I think that creates a challenge and a precedent at the city level that I'm uncomfortable with. So that's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Troy.
I appreciate Troy and his comments. Very, very good comments. I want to be clear on the record. When I brought up CC&Rs, parking, density, deed restrictions, and transfer fees, I'm simply referring back to my notes of what the developer has asked, has presented to us. I'm not saying that I'm in favor of a transfer.
I don't want you to perceive that I don't want to perceive that I'm criticizing you. I honestly don't.
I understand, and that's why I just want to make sure for the record that I don't come across as saying I'm in support of buying zoning. What I'm simply saying is referring back to the notes from that work session on the things that I had noted that the developer was willing to bring forward, and I asked if those would be brought forward again if it comes to a zoning.
Correct. Again, it was in that discussion. I wasn't going to bring it up today, but it became part of the discussion tonight. I figured that was more of the discussion at the zoning, right? I think it's also fair to say that long-term, that transfer fee comes on the backs of these low density or these low-income people. And so for that secondary reason, I still think it's problematic. It wasn't criticism of this. It was part of the discussion. I just wanted to address
And that's really all it is. I'm not taking a position on a transfer fee, but
sure.
But obviously we have competing needs, right?
Sure.
One with commercial that brings sales tax revenue, one with attainable affordable housing. And from what they said is a transfer fee is an offset as an option to offset some of the lost sales tax revenue that would come from a commercial piece. I'm not making a case for either. I'm just asking them, based on the things that I took down as notes, if they would be willing to hold to those or present those again at the zoning stage, which is the next stage.
Correct. I don't intend to get into an argument with you. That's not my intent. But they also said other cities they're not doing the transfer fee. And part of why the transfer fee was brought up was because it was denied under the prior council to change from C2. And so they're looking at that saying, well, you guys have already denied us for this. Here's this little carrot, before the horse to be able to do that. It didn't sit well with me then. It doesn't sit well with me now.
I appreciate that, Troy.
So that's the issue, right?
You got a good head. I appreciate all your comments.
So,
I just want to make sure that they know those are their words, not mine.
I do.
Okay.
I think that's clear. I mean, I'm clear, and I actually appreciate you because I didn't even think about it like that. So I appreciate you just bringing it up because I never thought of it like that. So it's just, I appreciate the comment.
I think also, in all fairness, on the sales tax issue, if you make some assumptions on that site, what you can get on that site by the time you figure commercial zoning, commercial parking, whatever else, and what sales tax revenue you're going to receive from that versus 80 condos or I think it was 88 condos that they had proposed at one point, and the property tax collection the city's going to see, there's a fair amount of offset there. It may not be one for one, but it's pretty close, right?
Well, and this kind of dialogue is great because what it really does, it brings us back to the point of this general plan amendment, which is, does it make more sense for this piece to be commercial or high density residential? That's really what the question is tonight. And we're not going to vote on it, but we're wrapping up a public hearing on it. So that's really what the question is. What does it make sense for it to be?
I don't think there's a financial drawback to the city to change it from commercial to high density residential. If it's a safety issue, fine. If it's a feeling threatened by the other apartment projects next door, it's not a threat or competition in my sense.
I hope that
I do have a challenge with the idea that, well, okay, we just held these other apartment projects to this parking with additional open space, with additional amenities, but we're not going to hold something over here. That does create an issue from the apartment developers in that sense.
Sure.
Right. So,
well said.
okay, thanks.
And I think what was it, the salesman on the life jacket salesman on the Titanic who said that just because it's a sales pitch doesn't mean it's something you shouldn't buy.
Anybody else? I'm going to entertain a motion to close this public hearing.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, I'll do a roll call vote.
Coates, aye.
Ward, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Cliff, aye.
Staley, aye.
All right, thank you. Move on to item B, public hearing for consideration to approve an amendment to a portion of the Washington City Code, Section 9-8F-8-F, more specifically as found in Title 9, Zone Regulations, Chapter 8, Residential Zones, Article F, Plan Unit Development, Residential Zone, Section 8-F, Residential Short-Term, really? Short-term rental development standards. Couldn't we have just said that?
You can, Mayor, you're the mayor, and that's I'll always claim, you can do what you need to do. So
Why are you making them so long?
I thought it was fairly, yeah.
I was smiling. It's okay.
Thank you, Mayor. As stated, this is the applicant, of course, is the city, and we're just following up with information that's brought before you and staff, et cetera, to make this change. And again, Section 9-8F, 8F, part of, again, those standards within the short-term development standards of the PUD. Currently, I'll keep this because we have had this in a work session. Currently, it reads, a single property management overseer will be required for residential short-term development. Projects with 40 units or more require a property management overseer that lives on site. And through a bombardment of circumstances, issues, complaints, comments, so on, staff and I think the council has agreed that we can look at this ordinance, and the proposed is this new F, the homeowners association or their designee for each short-term rental development will be responsible for providing to the city a single point of contact that resides at whether on the property or within. And here's the thing that we'll talk about that you wanted to. I left it at the 20 minutes. I know the council is very desirous to change that, which we can do in the ordinance section if you want. You can talk about it here in your public hearing as well, but change that to either 20 miles or within the county were the options. There might have been a third. I'll leave that with the council, but that will be directly responsible for these three items. Any and all circumstances and or disturbances that may need addressing due to the property owner or their guest, and assuring that all units being used as short-term rentals have a current Washington City business license. And finally, 3, assuring that all units being used as short-term rentals will be scheduled for and pass a Washington City Fire Department yearly inspection of the unit being used as a short-term rental. So that's where we're going to get out of worrying about who's advertising, as I like to do my bunny ears. We won't be into that conversation, is I think that's the best term I'll use. There's lots of other ones I'd like to use, but the conversations about multiple, whatever, we're not going to get into the advertisement of the units. We're just going to have a point of contact that's responsible for all those 3 items. And as the city looks at it, that's the 3 that we're concerned about. So with that is the proposal on this public hearing. The Planning Commission reviewed this with a unanimous recommendation onto you to accept the amendment as presented to you for the 9-8F-8 letter F. as it pertains to the property management on short-term rentals. So I'll be glad to answer any questions, but I think we've talked about this 3 or 4 times as a council, but if there's anything else.
Drew, what did the planning commission have on the time frame of, did they ever discuss 20 minutes, 20 miles?
They really didn't. I think they were fine with, I don't think they caught it, and I appreciate that some of you have, and I do get the 20-minute thing. I just was using it as, again, it's not so much we're going to start the stopwatch. We just want the point that somebody can't be in Ogden property management this, because how are they going to take care of it? So we want to put some sort of line in the sand, and that's the line. And again, we're still not going to, if we put it 20 miles, I'm not going to go measure my truck from that unit out to, I'm not being, we need something that's going to be close, that we know they're going to be close by. So
I understand
I'm
that.
willing to accept whatever the council wants. It's fine.
I agree with you. I mean, I don't want you to, but if you get bored one day, you might get your measuring stick out. And
it might be fun just to see where the average of all, no.
If you get mad at someone and then all of a sudden they're 21 miles.
Yeah, if they ticked me off the day before and they're 21, they're getting cited if they're.
There's a potential there, and that's why I'm sitting here going, why don't we just do Washington County and call it good?
And I'm fine, whatever the council,
That's my opinion, but
we can do that. So.
I like that idea, because 20 minutes is hard to measure, right, in time. How do we measure the time it would take someone? And the point is well taken. Anything that's reasonable about how to respond in a quick manner, I would support.
The reality is, from a prosecuting standpoint, if we ever get to where we're going, we write these because we intend to enforce them. If you ever get to an enforcement, the judge is going to make sure that element's there. And if you say 20 miles, it's going to have to be, you're going to have to show 20 miles. So just keep it from that perspective.
And I think, we kind of went back and forth on which might be better there. I'm fine with most of the compromises that have been put there. I do think we may want to consider having a 24-hour contact component, even if they have to have an answering service. It doesn't necessarily matter how close they are if they won't pick up their phone.
Point.
So are you saying like they have to respond within 24 hours of the?
No, a 24-hour phone, somebody who, like an answering service or an employee.
Because if I understand that.
Number one, we would say any and all of their guests within available 24 hours.
Because otherwise, beforehand, it was an on-site supervision with somebody.
Right.
So I think transitioning into this is still within reason. I think it broadens the ability of property management companies to do business within our company, but not decrease the service that's available to the patrons, the people that are there. Yes. I still feel like a mileage would be a better compromise, because it's easier to say when you're there or not. My grandpa can get a lot of places in 20 minutes. I won't say it's legal.
But you can also hop in your helicopter and get.
I'm telling you, there's a lot of gray in that I don't think we should assume. Mileage is a very solid, don't worry about it. It's a pretty easy standard to delineate when 20 miles starts and ends compared to 20 minutes. So I appreciate the council that this is something we intend to enforce. And so I don't think 20 minutes is something that we can enforce. So I do like the idea of the 24-hour contact, and I do like the concept of a mileage.
All right, thank you. Any additional comments? Not, I'll open it up to the public hearing. Any of you out there that want to say maybe 25 miles, or 26 miles?
26.2?
20, yeah.
Welcome to C2.
Put a half component for me.
22 miles.
Promise.
And it doesn't look like, I will entertain a motion to close this public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second, roll call vote.
Staley, aye.
Clough, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Ford, aye.
Coates, aye.
All right. A reminder, we will make a motion on that in 2 weeks. I forgot to tell the.
That's on the
Oh, is this tonight?
It is.
Oh, good. We can do something tonight, huh? Item C, public hearing for consideration to approve an amendment to a portion of the Washington City Code Section 9-11-2D, more specifically, found as found in Title IX zoning regulations, Chapter 11, industrial/business park zones, Section 2D. Use regulations replacing/revising the list of uses. Applicant, Washington City.
Thank you, Mayor. And again, we are the applicant on this, wishing to update our permitted use list chart within, again, the industrial zone. It was basically brought up, and I'm just going to scroll down. The manufacturing, we used to have a definition that read, and let me just briefly go, and you'll kind of understand probably why we changed it. But currently it reads manufacturing of abrasive acids, aluminum, batteries, asphalt products, foam products, cellophane products, not cellophane, wherever that came from, cellophane products, cement products, cloth products, excluding mills, concrete products, electronic instrument products, food processing, excluding mills, and the slaughter of animals, furniture products, glass products, ironworks, leather products, metal finishing or plating products, sheet metal products, tools, and wood products, excluding mills. And that's how it kind of read, which is a little bit out there and a lot of interpretation. What we're proposing is we broke the manufacturing part up into two, a light and a heavy, which is an establishment engaged in the manufacture for the light, predominantly from previously prepared materials of finished products or parts, including processing, fabrication, assembly, treatment, and packaging of such goods and incidental storage, sales and distribution of such products, but excluding basic industrial processing, because that goes in our next definition of the manufacturing heavy. The converting of raw or partially processed materials into a product used for further processing or distribution. Examples of heavy manufacturing include lumber or paper mills, sewage treatment plants, stone, clay, glass product manufacturing, and similar operations. These uses may be conducted partially or wholly outdoors and usually create noxious byproducts such as dust, fumes, hazardous waste products, noise, vibration, and glare. This makes it a little bit more clear. So basically your light manufacturing is stuff that's already been processed in the heavy industrial zoned areas and brought in and then basically assembled to make something, where your heavy manufacturing is where you're taking raw materials, making into usable products.
So Drew, I have a quick question on that. What would a truss manufacturer fall under? Because they're essentially not making the products, they're assembling, but it seems more heavy to me, but I don't know what that falls in. Because they usually do the work outside.
Yeah, because they're basically breaking 2x4s. They're already pre-assembled and they're putting them in. If anybody's ever been to a truss plant, it's kind of cool. They lay all these 2x4s out, and they put metal plates, and then they roll this big heavy machine and then put on the next set of units. That one is a tough one, but I mean, I could see where if I take the pure definition, I could see it being allowed in a light industrial.
But in your opinion, should it be in a?
My opinion would be probably a heavy.
So do we need to add?
Because I heard the loud music they play at them. No,
because of the nature, because it's outside, not necessarily.
It might be wise to maybe put a truss man. If these are the ones you thought of, I have no problem adding in our heavy. Putting, because if it's spelled out specifically, then I know I can take it there and not. They could say, well, I'm up here, but I could say, well, it's specifically called out here, and that would override.
But like a concrete plant is already under that because they're making the product.
They are. That's right. Now, if I may also, that's part of the change. Also let you know, and people may be offended by this, but thanks to the state, we are required by this, the next two boxes dealing with medical cannabis cultivation and processing. And again, I put this is directly from Utah license law that says they need to be licensed and they need to be at least 1,000 feet away from a community location and 600 feet away from a primary residential zone. And also going in our industrial is the medical cannabis pharmacy. Again, Utah licensed at least 200 feet away from a community location and 600 from a primary residential zone. Again, required by the state to have in your city, you can't exclude them. And so a lot of cities are putting them here in this. They can go in ag, et cetera, but we're at least bringing it up and we can at least take them to one place right now. Because most of them are going to grow them indoors anyway, I've come to realize. If I was in the business, I would definitely be doing it indoors. Keeps my product a little more protected and secured.
You seem to know a lot about it, Drew.
So, well, you are welcome.
We really
But no, when this came through, I really had, as part of my job, I started thinking about all the scenarios.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I thought about it. I just don't want Joe Farmer out there in the middle of his 40 acres, and he's just walking around at night with his shotgun. I'd rather have it maybe indoors in a building that has a little more security. I appreciate
That
the comment.
that new strain of
Sorry, Drew.
No, you're
soy is
fine.
called the Gorilla Grower. I
Yes.
found out it's unique.
And the fifth one that I'm changing here is this residential athletic. And I only do this because we've actually taken a few of these through the conditional use permit process. But I looked in a lot of other cities, they actually have these recreational athletic enterprises, indoor only. Some examples were go-kart track, climbing walls, ice skating rink, roller skating rink, soccer, and other recreational sports entertainment type activities. But we don't want to have in there as arenas, per se. If someone wanted, open up a basketball gym and hold tournaments all the time, we don't want them in the industrial park probably. And it gets to be a parking and movement issue for the most part. We'd like them more in a commercial zone. So those are the 5 changes. I will just note to you quickly, I took conditional use permits out of this. You'll see those 3 asterisks. I didn't change the words. The other use is not listed. That's been in our current code. I just wanted to change because I have this love-hate thing with conditional use permits, because I never intended for the ones that we want to let the planning commission see if they are in harmony and character with the zone, thinking that because I have a conditional use permit that anybody can come in and the state says all conditional use permits are permitted uses. People would use that. So I wanted to take it out of that and basically just say that it's still going to be in the asterisks. You can go to the bottom of your chart. And these are still done through a public hearing process with the planning commission to consider if they're in harmony and in intent with the zone. Then they can also add conditions as part of their process. So we will do the public hearing process. They'll determine if it's in harmony and they're going to let them be permitted in there and they'll put conditions on it. But I don't want to call it technically a conditional use permit. So that was just a minor change there. So with that, council, the Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the amendment for this new chart and table of the permitted list of uses within the industrial zone onto you, the City Council. And I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have on this proposed amendment to the city code.
Any questions or comment from Drew? All right, again, this is a public hearing. I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote.
Coates, aye.
Ward, aye.
Cliff, aye.
Staley, aye.
Thank you. Move on to, item 6, consideration to approve an ordinance to adopt zone change request Z-20-01 to change land use designation from A-20 agriculture, 20 acres minimum to PUDR, Plan Unit Development Residential, located approximately at 3925 South Washington Fields Road, applicant Smoothie Kings Holdings LLC.
Thank you, Mayor. Now we're in the ordinance stage of the meeting. Just to remind you, the 2-week holdover has been completed for this item. The item is now ready for city council action. I will point out a few things. You asked this developer to go look at moving that building 11 and 12. They have moved it almost 8 feet to the south. I know it sounds like it's only 8 feet, and they took the parking. The parking used to be in the corner here in the playground area. They've moved it up in between this building. So they have shifted that building. And I think they actually moved both of them down 9 and 10 a little bit, maybe not. But they just put the dimensions in, showing you the view corridors in between those buildings. But I know building 11 and 12 has been shifted south. 7.5 feet roughly, and move that parking. And I think that was really, after the public hearing, that was one of the things that they went back and addressed and listened to that and proposed moving that building. Now, they did move buildings 13 through 18, shifted them over, I think, roughly 5 feet to help offset that 7-foot, change to the south on 11 and 12. So that's roughly, it's still the same, and they did move some fire hydrants around, which I wasn't worried about in the zone change. We'll deal with that with construction drawings, because that's where the fire marshal will then have review of that, where he'd like to have them specifically. So other than that, that is the three things. So building 11, 12 shifted, 13, 18 shifted, fire hydrants moved, and the parking stalls you can see are now between building 10 and 11. So I'm glad to answer any questions on that or anything you want to go into your.
The only thing on this is that I remember a couple of council members really concerned about the concept.
Is your microphone on, Councilman? I'm sorry.
Yes.
There you go. Okay.
I'll get closer. One of the things that was brought up, not necessarily my concern, but was the concept of it's fully noted that not all of this is going to be grass in the landscape area, but there was just a concern of just trying to see where the grass ended compared to rock sort of things, fully noting that the developer is not submitting a detailed landscape plan, but just understanding better. We have 2 proposed park areas and trying to figure out just how much of that is an open space compared to the others is worthwhile. I know we have the grass.
Yeah, I just want to point out that so
there's that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so is there grass in both the playground areas and?
Well, they did say there was going to be grass, of course, and this, I'm sure there's going to, but we'll have them come up and address that. I think that's fair to bring them up, but they did state there was going to be grass here. Now, where it went to, maybe we'll have them be more, show you on here of roughly where that's going to be and to take that into the account. So, but I think that's fair. If that's one of your questions that you had over the 2 weeks for clarification, that's fair enough to bring up and get that pointed out.
Thank you.
Anything else that I can?
Thank you, Drew. Could we have the applicant come on up?
Dave Nazel. Yeah, and that doesn't have it on there. They had, in talking to the landscaper, what they're planning on doing is having a 5-foot rock and retaining curbing that goes around it. And I anticipate that being the same off 12 and off 13.
5 foot from all corners and all edges, is that where?
Yeah, not the whole, where the playground is won't be grass, where the barbecue and shade area is won't be grass, obviously. But the goal is to have as big of a grass area as possible for throwing balls, kicking soccer balls. And that's why they took the parking and shifted it up, was to still maintain as much grass area as possible.
So on the detention area, are you, not trying to change areas, but still on the same subject of, is the slope grass as well? Is it all grass or is it rock on the edge and
No,
grass on the bottom?
I don't know. That's a good question. I suspect it's rock on the sides and grass on the bottom.
So how do the kids get down there without?
I'm sure there'll be a sidewalk going down to it.
Okay. I'm just concerned that there's not an access that can actually, if to use the detention basin and actually have it rocked everywhere. Can they make it so it's a 4-to-1 slope and grassed everywhere and then it still can be used? But I do know that grass dies when it does rain, and we have that problem at Treasure Valley Park, and that's a detention pond, and so you don't want it all grass, but you want the nuisance water to be rocked.
Right. We agree. We'd want it to be able to be accessed to be used.
And what was the exact footage that you moved 11 and 12?
So, yeah, it was 7 and change. I don't remember the decimal, but.
And to move it all the way, you need another 7?
What's
right?
that?
To move it to the property line, to the property to the west. You need another 7
I'm lost
feet.
on what you're saying.
Yes, roughly it would be. I measured it out.
Because you said originally it was 15 feet, so we're taking, if you moved it 7.5, 8 feet, you still have.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I apologize. I don't know what that is.
Any additional questions? Thank you. If there are no additional questions, I'll entertain a motion. If somebody's ready.
Kind of one thing that I've been looking at is there's 3 play areas in this area, which is a lot more than we typically have had, which I'm all about. But moving lots 11 and 12, I still don't feel like it's going to affect the park if you move it 7 more feet. I mean, I don't want to take away from any more grass area, but 7 feet, and it helps everybody. I mean, realizing that Steeplechase is zoned R16. There isn't one R16 lot in that subdivision, all R18. So just keep that in mind. And I look at it and think, push it 7 feet. I mean, we gained 5 extra lots when we asked them to relook at it. So it's a win-win for everybody, and you still get your park area.
Drew, I can't see, what's the distance between building 7-8 to building 910 and building 910 to building 1112?
It says 42.1 between 8 and 9 and 44.3.
So I don't know why that just jumped back out of there, but yeah, they both have 42 and 44 feet as those view corridors through there.
I kind of like it. I think it's a nice compromise. My concern was different than most of the council. I wanted to make sure that we retain the park. I think they moved some things around and did a pretty good job retaining park space for the kids who were there and still making a compromise for the neighbors. So I appreciate what they've done there.
And you like how it is currently, right?
Yeah, I it is there.
I do have a question as to right at the entrance there.
North, south, sorry.
Well, you can pick either one, honestly.
Okay.
The concept of the lines going through the landscape, are those walking paths?
Yeah, that's a walking path. You see, those lines at the south end.
Yeah, so I'm just clarifying. So
It goes
these walking paths, I see there's those, and there's some that go down the center.
right down in the center.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Within that, is it, I know, I'm sorry, I'm kind of getting picky about landscape stuff, but just curious, what is the surface of that? Is that a gravel? Is that a concrete? Is it a?
Well, they haven't determined, most of them aren't required. They're just trying to keep the kids that have to be on the street.
Right.
I think, so I don't know if you. Asphalt.
Okay, good, thank you. That was just kind of curiosity.
So you're going to have it's a 5 foot wide asphalt or 10?
I think it's 4 foot.
I just asked because it's shown all the way around the whole perimeter on this east and south side.
Yeah, just curious.
As a pathway to get to the park, which I actually do like. And
I think it's unique. I think it's a great thing. I was just curious what it's made out of. That was my main concern.
But it's a hard surface.
Hard surface. That's good for the bikes, the little pump track of the neighborhood.
The little kid on those scooters we talked about earlier tonight.
You know it's coming.
Yeah, it'll have to be.
Because this is when it gets accepted as now.
So everyone doesn't agree. No, it's automatic.
Because there's a lot of ways that pathway could
Don't feel free,
exist.
again, it's not a requirement, it's part of the thing they're providing, so I think, yeah, we can probably, that can be a condition number.
Because we have had PUDs with a lot more detail than this before we've passed them, especially relative to landscaping. At least on this one, I would like to see, since it's called out, I would like to know what that surface is.
Yeah. And so I'd say we can do condition number 10, just says the path being shown in portions of the project, it will be minimum 6 feet asphalt.
See, I don't know. Are you okay? What's please talk at this moment. Is it a 4 foot, a 6 foot? It looks 4 foot to me, but I'm trying to measure this from my perspective.
I don't know, 4 to 6 feet. I mean, we're going to make it as big as we can because that's wasted space back there.
Right. I think it's a great way to bring the
and it would be
community
hard
into
surface. The
space.
plan was asphalt on that south side. We had contemplated concrete through the middle of, like what's shown right there. But if we want to make a condition for hard surface, whatever it is for that, a minimum
surface,
4 feet.
not being compacted gravel or something.
Yeah.
You know.
I think you need to state concrete or asphalt.
Concrete or asphalt, I think, is very clear.
No.
There's so many hard surfaces, like 20-minute drives. I like that to be designated either concrete or asphalt. It looks like 4 feet is a minimal that you've placed in there. It looks standard to a walkway to me. Would 4 feet be a minimal be okay?
That's fine.
Okay.
So
If you want to make them 10 feet, my goodness, great.
Yeah, we may make it bigger than that, but I would be fine
as a
saying 4 foot minimum.
I would be okay with that. That would make me feel all right.
The other condition that was brought up in planning was keeping the road, the south access road, shut down until
The north end.
until it's final. Well, my suggestion is until it's final platted on the south road for construction traffic.
The steeplechase one.
Steeplechase Road, not have access.
Northwest.
It has to be fenced and blocked with Jersey barriers, so that people can't just go through the barriers until it's final platted. And then at that point,
Jersey barriers will stop construction traffic.
well, it does a better job than the cones. So that's just it was brought up then.
Councilman, are you saying until final plat?
And I'd say till final plat because then the roads are done, everything's built. As soon as it's final platted, it's approved, and then the traffic can go either way. Then it opens up on the phase one.
I want to be, and I'm only saying this because I know technically on a final plat, we allow up to 12 months recording. I'd rather say when it's recorded, the day of recording, then the street needs to be open because that's when it's.
That's what I'm meaning. When
Yes,
it's
I know that.
recorded.
When it's recorded, yeah, and I'm not trying to split hairs.
I don't know
But
what
when
you're
someone gets a final plat, they actually have up to 12 months to record it. So if I say it at final plat, then I'm saying when you approve the final plat, they can then open it up. I don't want it to be.
that's not what
I know, yeah,
I meant recorded.
I'm not trying to be nitpicky with you, please. I'm just, because technically, I got to be careful on that. I'll just say at record date, when it's recorded. Then again, please forgive me, Councilman Coates. Again, I think you understand what I'm saying. I'm not trying to be.
Yeah, I was going to say final plat recorded.
And I'd like to disagree. Could we do something with inspection when it's done? Because sometimes, there's usually a decent lag between those improvements being done and getting signatures from the city and whatnot. I think the goal is to keep, while there's the construction equipment coming in and out. I could be wrong. I don't want to put words in your mouth. My assumption was the mud and stuff and also the big heavy equipment out of the neighborhood.
That is my intention, but the best way to do it is by final plat. How else do we dictate that? Because as soon as the road's fully improved, then I think I'm fine. But it's not a public road until it's final platted.
It's not a public road.
It's not a public road. It's not. So that's my only concern. I just
asked for expeditious signatures and on plat.
I feel you. But I agree with you. It's a liability thing on the being open for a public street.
I get it.
And so that's the only mechanism we have.
We're fine doing that.
They get on a bond for that, and record that final plat, and still not have a completed road. So I think if we're gonna trigger it out being completed and usable, maybe we want to trigger it from having public work.
Yeah.
As approved by public work. Put something to that effect, because you can record these, you can dedicate them, the roads aren't done yet, well, you have a bond, you can't build a house.
Good point.
So I think we might want to trigger it on language that public, upon approval by public works director for use by the public.
So while you're up here, I still don't have it clear in my head why it's such a big deal to move 11. And no, I'm just saying, I don't have a plan that's saying it. So I just want to hear it from you on why it's killing this park and it's not going to make it work. And don't get me wrong, you're being super workable. I like it's way better than it originally started. So I appreciate everything you've done.
Yeah.
I just don't know why it's such a big deal to move it 7 feet, how it's going to make or break your project.
we can drive semis between 8 and 9 and 10 and 11 sideways. Like I'm actually surprised that this has been such a hot point. My concern is, are we going to, this could have been very much more intrusive, a single family residential, 10 feet off the line, 30 feet high, totally looking down everybody's backyard. And I don't think the council, had we come in with an R1 10 or 12 designation, that anybody would have said one word about it.
Right.
So if we're going to get into where we live or who our friends, I appreciate it, and I know when this happens in our backyard and stuff, I wish this was single family. I've been to both people's houses, and I look at the Vermilion Cliffs that they see and stuff like that, and it's easier when I don't go to their house, because then it's a name and a person, and it's like, you know,
Right.
on paper it's a lot easier. But if we're gonna, I look at, while one person's impacted 7 feet, the benefits to 76 families or whoever on this side, and you're also elected representatives for those to be 76 at the same time. And so we feel like we've made a very good effort. I've never been asked to reduce the size of a park before in favor of what will probably be rock between 10 and 11 and 8 and 9 and useless space for the neighborhood. And so, yeah, I know it's 7 feet, but my partner Dwayne, like he mentioned, he's the one that sells this stuff, and I'm going to fight. I think we've done more than enough to have this project approved. And like Dwayne had said, I get we picked up 5 extra units. They're not equivalent to the 3 on the other side. And I get it's more, and we don't need to get in the financial part of it, but I'm saying I feel extremely good about the effort that we've made with this. And if it's gonna fail, then it fails on our best effort for it.
I would like to say, with what you've proposed, to see how this has morphed and changed, how we appreciate it. I do feel the concept for the benefit of those who live within the community. I do err on the side of a larger park. I appreciate the way you articulated that. I really look forward to the way that this community can interact. You've put some great amenities where people can move around. I like the little pathways, either concrete or asphalt, whatever they end up being. I find it's a very unique way to address a piece of property and merge some unique concepts that will address a lot of needs within our community. So 3 great places for open space. You got walkability, you've got diversity in roads. I feel with 11 and 12, I like how it aligns up more with 20 and 19. I feel like it just addresses the structure and form of the space and the community in there. In favor with Councilman Coates, I do appreciate, well, why not move it a little bit more? I feel like there have been enough concessions granted, especially as has been talked about by the developer, plus the concept of maintaining the most valuable part for those who are moving within the area, which is more open space, which the people who will be building on the other side of 12 will be insanely grateful that that's there as well. So I can see how we've kind of drugged this out a little bit. I'm grateful that we've erred on the fact of more open space is better than less.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll motion that we approve an ordinance to adopt zone change Z-20-01 to change land use designation from A-20 agricultural 20 acres minimum to PUDR planned unit development residential located at approximately 3925 South Washington Fields Road with the additional conditions that a concrete or asphalt trail of a minimum width of 4 feet wide be built as per the renderings on the plat, and that the northeast entrance of Steeplechase be blocked off.
Southwest.
Is it southwest?
Southwest.
The southwest entrance to the subdivision be blocked off until around the time of final plat or recording as approved by the, when the road is completed, as approved by the Public Works Director. Is that a mouthful?
I have a motion.
Hold on. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Didn't mean to interrupt. You're saying it has to be approved by Public Works and final platted?
Well, I'm saying.
Yeah, we have to own that public road already, and just in case there's bonding on it, still have to be approved by Public Works.
Okay.
I have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote.
Staley, aye.
Clough, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Ward, aye.
Coates, aye.
All right, that's approved. Item B, consideration to approve an ordinance amending a portion of the Washington City Code, Section 9-8F-8-F, more specifically, as found in Title IX zoning regulations, Chapter 8 residential zones, Article F, planned unit development, residential zone, Section 8-F, residential short-term rental development standards.
Okay, Mayor, this is again the one in council, short-term rental. Basically what I need you to make a decision on. That's it. 20 minutes, 20 miles, 22 miles, Washington County. I'm not giving you any more options.
26.2. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
20 minutes,
Will you do the honors?
26.2 miles,
26.2.
or Washington County.
With a
I like
minimum response time of 3
I would
hours.
love to have it in there at 26.2.
Are we ready for a motion?
Craig, I know you can.
Okay, somebody say it.
So should I also say they have to have it done and they have to run there within 3 hours? It's part of the
Within foot travel of,
3 hours or car.
we could break it out by age. Unless you're 45, then the Boston qualifying time counts within.
Now we're getting too specific.
All right, anybody going to take a stab at a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make a motion. We consider to approve the ordinance amending a portion of Washington City Code, Section 9-8F-8-F, more specifically as found in Title IX zoning regulation, Chapter 8, residential zone, Article F, planned unit development, residential zone, Section 8-F, residential short-term rental development standard. With the change in the distance to, let's say, Washington County is my motion.
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote. Start with Councilor Clough.
Clough, nay.
Ivy, aye.
Ward, aye.
Coates, aye.
Staley, aye.
All right, that passes 4-1. Item C, consideration to approve an ordinance amendment to a portion of the Washington City Code 9-11-2D, more specifically, as found in Title IX zoning regulations, Chapter 11, industrial business park zones, Section 2D, use regulations replacing/revising the list of uses.
Okay, Mayor, I think we talked about this. There was only one comment, whether you want to do truss manufacturers and the heavy side, I think, is all that's left on the table there. So
I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'll take a stab at that. I'd make a motion to approve an ordinance amending ordinance amendment to a portion of the Washington City Code, Section 9-11-2, more specifically as found in Title IX zoning regulations, Chapter 11, industrial business park zones, Section 2D, use regulations revising the list of uses with the provision of including truss manufacturing in the heavy manufacturing zone.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. We'll start with Councilman Ivy.
Aye.
Ward, aye.
Coates, aye.
Staley, aye.
Clough, aye.
All right, that's approved. Item 7, resolution. Continuation of the consideration to approve a resolution to open and amend the Washington City 2019-2020 fiscal year budget for the funds of Washington City. Kimberly Roosh. Any additional comments or questions on that?
Mayor, if not, I'd like to make a motion.
No, you. Oh, wait. I'm going to let you do that one. Go for it. You're good.
Okay. I'll motion to approve Resolution R2020-04, which is a resolution opening and amending the Washington City 2019-2020 fiscal year budget for the funds of Washington City with the following modifications, and both applying to the general fund. 1, the city celebrations account be increased as an ongoing committed amount of $25,000 for Cotton Days, which would include 24,000 to the tractor club for last year, or 2,400 for the tractor club for last year, 2,500 for the current year. And other projects account be added or increased by 15,000 per Kelly Charlton's presentation in our workshop meeting 2 weeks ago.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Councilman Ward, would you start us off?
Ward, aye.
Staley, aye.
Clough, aye.
Ivy, aye.
All right, that's approved. Thank you very much. Item 8, surplus vehicles. Consideration to approve the sale of surplus vehicles. Public Works Director.
Thank you, Mayor. This comes before council every year. This is our rollout vehicles, the ones we purchase every year, run for a year, sell it. Asking the council to approve the sell of the list that's provided in your packet. The prices listed on that is our minimum bid price. That is the price we paid for the vehicles when we bought them new.
Would you mind just elaborating a little bit on the program for people here? I think it's a unique program, and it's been working for us for years.
So we purchase vehicles on state of Utah contract. We buy at a very good price on those vehicles. We will drive those vehicles for a year, sell them at advertised sealed bid to the public after 1 year. Usually the trucks will be right around 10, 12,000 miles on the trucks. It saves the city money where we don't have any maintenance cost on them. It changes oil, put fuel in them. And at the end of that 1 year cycle, actually makes a very good value on a vehicle for the public to purchase.
Because you're typically selling these above the purchase price.
Our minimum bid is our purchase price. Last year, every truck sold for over $5,000 of our purchase price. And it was still a very good buy for the public.
So, Mike, on the say we make that $5,000, are we using that again to, like, eventually are we getting to a point that we can bank that money, or does that money just get put back in the general fund?
No, it rolls back in. So every one of these vehicles are enterprise funds. It rolls just back into the revenue for the enterprise funds. Every year we will budget for the replacement vehicle. Every year it goes up a little bit as new prices go up. Some years we change out a little bit because we don't want to have too many of one type of vehicle. So this year we actually have I have a Ford Ranger, we have F-150s, F-250 diesels. And we have to really watch what the public wants. That's what we have to buy. We've tried this in the past with the work vehicles. They did not work. We couldn't sell those. People didn't want them.
I'll mention one more thing. So we've got the rollout fleet program in place for the general fund. Our next step will be developing that same program for the enterprise funds. Then the following step after that will be developing the rollout for the heavy equipment. And the fleet fund and the general fund is self-funding, and it's turned out really, really well. And so now that we've run that for a couple of years, we'll be developing enterprise funds and then the heavy equipment.
Yeah, these vehicles that we're rolling out every year have to be very well maintained. You can't have somebody that's out dirty feet, dirty bodies getting in them. So it's only a select few people that this works for.
Is Ford the only manufacturer?
Ford has been historically low bid for 30 years. So
it's up to bid?
Yes. State of Utah puts it out for bid. We go out, we look at the vehicles, we actually look at the market, what's selling in the market. And a comparable Chevrolet will cost us almost $5,000 more.
Thank you.
Any additional questions for Mr. Shaw? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. We approve the surplus vehicle sale for the 2019 vehicles, I guess, presented by staff.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. We go with the roll call vote.
Staley, aye.
Clough, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Ward, aye.
Coates, aye.
Thank you. Move on to item 9, Department of Water Quality, consideration to approve the Municipal Wastewater Planning Program Annual Report for the State of Utah Water Quality Board. Mike Shaw.
Thank you, Mayor. I think Denise really hates me because I have all 3 of the last of the agenda. This is the annual report that comes every year to council. This is just giving the state information on our wastewater system, how we were doing with our system. You've got that report in your packets and enjoy it. You have any questions?
It was a good
In the
read.
right forum, Ted. I really appreciate that. I would just like to say, first of all, Mike, I appreciate the effort you've gone into this. Reviewing with you, talking about the complexity of our wastewater system and everything else. We've put our system against anyone. We have done so well within the geographical confines of our city. It is really a unique piece of work which you've worked with as we've grown as a city, and I appreciate the ingenuity that's gone into this. So thank you.
I must say our wastewater system is probably one of the best in the states. We're one of the very few that we've actually modeled our system. So, and it's something that we constantly upgrade on our system to improve it, and we keep improving that model on our wastewater system.
Thank you, Mike. I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, if it's okay, I'd like to motion to approve the Municipal Water Planning Program Annual Report for the State of Utah Water Quality Board as presented by Director Mike Shaw.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Coates, aye.
Ward, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Clough, aye. Staley, aye.
Thank you. Property exchange, consideration to approve a property exchange for a non-significant parcel located at 300 East Telegraph. I like how that's
Yeah, let me.
deemed non.
Yeah, there's a reason we note that. So significant is considered a property valued over $100,000, and in the event it's considered significant, it requires a public hearing. And so non-significant is a term of art here.
Wow.
A term
Less
of
than
art?
100,000. So this doesn't need a public hearing because of its value.
Correct.
Wow.
I just like the fact that it gives us a right turn lane.
No, me too. Me too.
Right.
No matter what you call it.
I think this was just a really nice way to approach this with the property owner. And anyway, we'll listen to you explain what you did.
Okay, thank you again, Mayor. This was one, actually, the property approached us about getting access to the parcel on the corner, which the city owns, which back when we did the telegraph widening, UDOT acquired that parcel and then deeded it over to the city. So it was at no cost to the city, and that was just approximately a year ago we received title of that parcel. Mr. Bell approached the city about getting access to that, to where he would not have to back his cars out. He purchased those 2 units. I don't think I have a lot in here.
Lot 2.
Anyway, the two lots right there, he purchased those. He's since then has gone and remodeled them, made them look a lot nicer. But he was concerned about access out onto 300 East. With this, we went to him, says, well, we've got a win-win for both of us. We'd like to get 11 feet of your property to where down the road we could put a turn lane in. And with that, we would give you the remaining parcel up here to use as an access in and out of those parcels. And so, it worked for both of us involved. So this actually came to council. I believe it was actually in a closed meeting back in, I think, around June. And council said, go ahead and proceed with this. So we're to the point now to where we're here.
Hey, Mike, one quick question. It's kind of a weird shape. Like, is it just like a equalization of the property? Like kind of that, it's not like a standard right turn where the arc is the wrong way in my mind.
Right, it is. And it's
reason?
just that's how we just divided the property up.
Okay.
Give us enough room. We're going to have to move some equipment off the corner. This is not something that we're going to move right away on. It's not our plan to move with it, but we'll have the right of way, the ability to do it. It'll be very costly because the power transformer or switch that's on the corner. There's quite a few things on the corner we've got to move out, so probably we'll have to buy that extra property.
The light would not need to be moved?
The light standard.
The light's fine.
We'd have to get new light pole.
Oh, it would,
Move the
okay.
light pole over, the control box for the, it'd be relatively costly to do it, but it's something we are planning for in the future.
So that's the only reason why I brought it up, is just if we're just not sure where it lands, if we had to eventually deed back, but I guess we can deal with that at a later date.
Oh, we have plenty of property to do what we need to do.
Well, I think that's the only thing I bring up is what if there's a huge area that now he can come back. I just want to, and say, hey, you don't need this property. Can I keep encumbering that into my property? I just want to make sure it was thought through, but it sounds like it has. So I just want to make sure just wasn't standard what we're.
Yeah, and he's just basically trying to use it to make a driveway, and his driveway will be right against the property line there on Telegraph. It'll be right in, right out, or just a right out.
On Telegraph. So he would make a driveway off of Telegraph.
Yes.
Does that limit his access? Like, not him, but say in the future he sells the lot, someone else on the west side.
They will be a right out on Telegraph only.
Okay.
For him on his property, up at the top corner there.
Yes.
And how far does that 11 feet come in from the existing road, right? Because that's 11 feet.
It's basically 11 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the sidewalk, the property line. It's additional.
12 feet. Yeah, 12 feet we're getting.
Does that still make it so I guess the driveway's moving, so the setbacks will move?
Okay. And do you have an estimate on timing of when?
No, like I say, it's not something that it's something we know that we'd like to have happen. It's just really going to dictate with our traffic flows and how soon we move on it.
You ready? I would be happy to make a motion on this. I waited for this turn lane for a while. I appreciate your work on that. I'd like to make a motion to approve a property exchange for a non-significant parcel located at Unity East Telegraph.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Coates aye.
Ward aye.
Ivy, aye.
Cliff eye.
Staley aye.
All right, thank you.
So
Thank you, Mike.
before Mike leaves, I had the opportunity to go to the Great White North, North Dakota this weekend for work. And I just wanted to compliment Mike on his roads, because our worst road in Washington City, no, this is no joke, our worst road in Washington City is their best road. So he does a phenomenal job with the roads. I know we have some problem areas, but he does a phenomenal job. So I just want to appreciate
All
your
these
work.
compliments, you're going to get him a big head.
Oh, I already got,
You do okay.
I already got.
No, I'm just saying,
you're getting there.
He does a really good
We
job.
won't need to
at
manage
maintenance.
you up when we're done. We'll just keep you nice and humble, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Councilman, for that comment. Anything to report from your assigned committees? I'll start with you, Councilman Staley.
So our active transportation ATC committee meeting is tomorrow, so I don't have an update for you tonight. But we're still talking about, trails and connectivity and scooters and e-scooters, and it's just a great opportunity to work with really good people from the city staff and from the community who just want to support an active lifestyle. So planning commission's doing great, and I think from a county-wide economic development standpoint, we've got some good things going too.
Thank you.
Well, there are a couple of things to report for. We came back from the community events, celebrations, talking with Cotton Days. We've had 3 meetings from the last council meeting to today, and we've probably got about 10% of them done. There are so many things that are going into play, and I just want to say a huge thank you to staff and the volunteers who are making this work. There are so many details, down to when do we water the lawn, or by the way, did you make sure that you don't get the automatic locks for the bathroom because they lock at 10, so we better get. There's so many little details that they're asking us to remember, and I appreciate. One of the main challenges we passed on to them was, can you write this down in a way that it can pass down if you guys died in a plane crash? Oh my goodness. And they're really putting so much work into that. Such a push for accountability and financing. One of our big goals is, after this is done, to not only come back with a budget to review, but a survey to review of how it went. What did we learn from this? We're already starting to get our eyes set on the 24th of July as well.
we're really getting better at moving ahead and being prepared to interact as a city and volunteers far before there's any fire. And so this year is kind of a big transition because a lot of our events have moved from being only volunteer-based and city-supported to more of a city treasure, where on certain ones, it's just got some really unique transitionary things. So I'm excited for this year to come back with that. I went to my first flood control meeting. It was thrilling. I've never been to such a unique meeting of gentlemen. It was good to see the concepts of what we're trying to do within the flood control. Recently, Mill Creek was added to the flood control, so there'll be more opportunities to address those funds that are going into this three-city agreement more towards Washington City. So I'm excited to push some of those things later on.
And on that, I got the opportunity to go with Councilman Clough as well. And the one thing I like about this process is being the group together as with the three cities. It gives us more of a bite when we go to get this the funding for these applications, which helps all our communities around the area. So the Flood Control Authority is a great committee, and I really enjoy it.
One of the cool highlights is they increased our emergency flood control measures from 600,000 to 700,000. So I mean, we have a very significant resource in the event, when the event happens, of flooding with our community. So I appreciate the direction and everything that's happened on that. I look forward to understanding it better. So I'm one meeting into being a professional now. So.
Okay, I've got a lot to convey. I attended LPC, that's a Legislative Policy Committee at the Capitol again last Monday. And it was a tremendous atmosphere up there. Encourage anyone that hasn't had the opportunity to be there during the session to be there. It's really an exciting place to be. I'm going to go over some bills, trying to lump some together. There were 5 House and Senate bills that had to deal with homeless, transitional housing, shelter and services, response plans, service funding amendments, and a drug-free zone. The most important thing that I would tell you about all those is that the governor assigned a homeless czar to those committees, so that basically he will be the one in charge of a lot of that legislation as it comes forward, so that they're all kind of channeled through the same place, so that they're addressing different issues and taking care of the actual problems of the homeless. HB 271 is the firearm preemption bill. And what that is that if you have a vendor coming in and they have the belief that there should not be guns at whatever that venue is, they can't say that they won't come if your city allows guns. So it preempts them from making that claim. And then on.
Say that again?
They don't have to enter into the agreement.
Yeah. It means that they can't require. Oh, go ahead.
You're dead right. City can't comply. It's live when it is. They can't change our local law.
If they were to say we're not going to come if there's guns there, then they would stay home.
Or likewise, they can't say we can't carry anything once.
Right. And the next one, SB 214, has to do with gambling machines and sweepstakes amendments. And it modifies the crime of gambling. Apparently up north, there is quite a problem with basement slot machines and things like that. And they've amended that to include some of the fringe of that. And it also, SB 242, deals with raffle amendments. And I tried to choose ones that kind of applied to Washington more than the others. And this has to do with defining what a cakewalk is, or what actually qualifies under other areas. That's actually the example.
And cakewalks.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
90% of what you raise has to go to the charity.
Yeah, that's what it is.
It can't be a facade.
And then HB 357 was the public education funding stabilization. And this was Senator Dan McKay. And every year at the legislature, educational funding is a huge issue. And what they wanted to try to establish this year was to create an automatic growth and an automatic floor for the negotiations to begin, so that they could zero in on some of the actual needs and not have all that time occupied by negotiations and crosstalk. And interestingly, the UEA is the only agency that's against that. But I saved the majority of my time to talk about tax reform. This was the bill, and when I talked to the other people up there, our legislators, which were great to meet with me, I actually was able to visit with them every trip, or at least a lot of them. And I asked them about the tax reform, because if you remember, that was repealed earlier on in the session. And some people felt like that had kind of cast a shadow over the session, that they felt like that they'd made strides and all of a sudden that was pulled out from under them. But yet they've done great. They've got their work done. But I want to talk about what's referred to as SJR 9. It's a Senate joint resolution, which is actually an amendment, or you have to amend the Utah State Constitution to use tax revenue the way that they want to do that. And so after the tax session, after the session is over, which ends Thursday at midnight, they will lean out what those need to be. They want to structure equalization to balance the accounts. And to do that, that's why they have to have the amendment. And it does require a constitutional amendment to provide a provision to structure equalization. And even this year, they would all tell you the budget's still very tight, and education is always that question mark. The big thing to remember about the tax reform that will be on the ballot in November is they're not proposing a tax increase per se. What they are amending is who's paying. So that's kind of a catch-22, in that if you're one that gets caught having to pay, then it could be a tax increase to you, because some will pay less, some will pay more. And I think the key words are no tax increase overall, but it will shift who pays. And so I would encourage people to stay informed. I plan to attend the sessions in the summer when they have their work meetings at the Capitol, if I'm required to be there. But there'll be 3 or 4 work sessions during the summer months where the legislators are on Hill for work meetings. And the League of Cities was great to work with. And I just want you to know I spent some time and got to know some mayors and city council members from all over the state, got to know some of the League of Cities leadership, and just really excited to be there and to represent Washington City. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, if I could. So Council Ivy, in being on this committee, has raised just my level of interest in the legislation that goes by. I basically watch these, especially the legislative committee, by computer every Monday during this session. And Council Ivy is in the front row on every one of those videotapes once. So I went within one of them, and I had the camera pointed toward it. He was every session after that. He was right there in the front row, so he was helping us to watch what we do. Yeah, Kurt. Oh, you know that. Because some of that stuff is really drive you out. And typically on the last Thursday, I have a pizza party in my office. I'm watching to see what they're trying to ramp down, seeing what they're trying to come up with on the last session before midnight. This year may not be the case, because typically we would have that pizza party.
Thank you. Councilor Ward.
I don't have much. I was going to point out the league. I don't know how many of you are receiving emails from the League of Cities and Towns. They do follow some of the legislation going on there. And I don't recall them sending out these action alerts very often, but they sent out an action alert tonight. A number of the issues that you talked about, and encouraging us to, as those vested in the abilities of cities to do their jobs, to reach out to your legislators and try and sway their opinion on a couple of those issues. So I'd be happy to forward that on to anybody who doesn't get those emails. Okay.
Thank you. Councilor Coates.
Just a couple more things on the flood control, since that's the only meeting I've had since last council meeting, is that it wasn't beneficial for Washington City, but it's just a good thing that it worked out. It was just the need for Santa Clara and St. George. And one thing that I liked was that the process was there was so much money that was provided by the NRCS and so much by St. George City, and they ended up getting more money. And so they were able to expand the project, and St. George held the amount that they were going to provide. So we got even a bigger pie of what we could do with the flood control on that aspect. So it was really neat to have that. I just wanted to bring that up. But besides that, I don't have anything else.
City manager report.
Thank you, Mayor. Let me just go over a couple projects in the city, then a couple other things that I'll cover with you. First of all, Washington Parkway. That's the connection up to the Green Springs area. The water line replacement's continuing. They've got one way done. We'll be working on the other direction. The final grade has been started, and we mentioned to you the crossing. The walls are up. They're doing the rebar right now for the roof of the crossing. And then, of course, once that is poured and had a time to cure, then they'll begin the dirt up there and the final installations of the storm drain and other installations on that. So that's on schedule, and that's moving along very well. The Main Street project, you're all watching. Everybody's watching that. But just a couple things that are of interest to people is that the gravity irrigation system is in place. So, and it is flowing. And so, of course, if there's any concerns that you hear from any of the citizens, just get a hold of us. Mike, we'll deal with that. But that system is running for them to irrigate. And also the culinary pressurized lines are being installed right now. And they're doing a great job up there. So appreciate everybody's patience on Main Street and their care. And so on the substation, the Staley substation, the last distill has been set. The block walls are being set. It's almost already there, but the block walls are being set. We're anticipating the transformers. They've been tested now in Virginia and should arrive in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And the control building is being framed and roofed, and then the interior is being finished with the electronics put into the control building. On the leisure services side, we've got the Green Springs debris basin. We are working within a debris basin, so when it rains, it causes us problems. We have to stop. And so we've had a couple of rainstorms that have gone through, not too bad. The one the other day wasn't bad, but the one before came through and we had to come back and kind of hold off for a few days and that. But we anticipated this. When you work into a storm drain basin like that, we just have to work through that. On the Warm Springs area, I think I say this right, is it Gabion? The Gabion baskets have been put along the north side of the pond, and those are done now, and they've had to bring that pond down, but what they've done is they've just pumped it around into the irrigation ditch, so the water's flowing. But I think we're done now. Mike and I were up there looking at it today, and so they'll be able to let that pond now fill back up to its capacity. We're going to scoop out all the non-native fish first, all the planters. And they're great because they're all just huddled together right now. Yeah. The tortoise is still alive and flowing around up there. The turtles, yeah, thank you.
If the tortoise is floating, you're in trouble.
Yeah,
the turtle's good.
The turtles are up there and still floating around okay, and so we'll refill that here shortly. On the Virgin River Trail. Actually wanted to bring this up and I don't know what's happened to the computer. On the Virgin River Trail, this is the one that runs along the Virgin River toward Sunrise Valley. So, of course, we've got some funding for that and the bid documents are being prepared for that. Okay, you may have to wait just a second, but I'll let this go. And then which will be available in May. And then the other thing I was just going to mention is I appreciate Drew and his department, and the mayor joined us, and Councilman Coates and Councilman Ivy. We met with Southern Utah Home Builders Association and shared with them the third-party inspection program that Washington City has now implemented. They seemed pretty excited about that. And I'll let all of you know now that as of today, I think we'll be able to add Sunrise Engineering. They have inspection services and now they'll offer. So I think we can vet them through and add them as one of this. That'd be two groups that are third-party approved. Schum's Coda is one, Sunrise Engineering is the other, and so we're kind of excited about that program. That's a kind of actually a unique program. We don't know of too many communities that are offering this, and they seem to be pretty excited about where we're going with this. I'm going to see if I can do this quick, and if I can't, we'll do it another time. I don't know why this just shut down. Okay, I think I can do it. So let me see if I can pull this up on council. Tara, if I can, okay. So the mayor and I and Mike sit on the Northern Corridor Committee, and we've had a few meetings with respect to this. I want to just go over this briefly. So what's happened is the environmental impact statement has begun. The environmental impact statement has a 1-year period in which it needs to be completed. It was quite interesting. I appreciated the commissioner, because if you look at the deadline for the EIS to be completed is at the end of January. He noted he would appreciate it the 1st of January or pre-inaugural day. You can think that through, and why that would be important. But anyway, what's happening is, so the alternatives, let me go through the alternatives real quick. There's an alternative one you can see called Northern, and that's not even shown on the map. That loops way up north and connects into the Leeds area. But it's not really practical.
Sorry, say, where's it go?
It goes all the way up into the Leeds area, okay?
Where does it come out?
Exit B at Leeds cutting across.
Diamond.
Oh, on that side, but then it connects to I-15 up by the Leeds. Way up
Yeah,
high.
so it'd be a,
Yeah, you're not even seeing it on this one.
Yeah.
It's not,
from Leeds to Diamond Valley.
yeah.
Wow.
It's not an alternative that's being considered. The next alternatives that are being considered are what's called, so 2, 3, and 4 all have nexus or connections to North Green Spring. So that's what has always been anticipated, that there will be a connection there, and 2, 3, and 4 are those 3 alternatives that do that. Number 5 is an expansion of the Red Hills Parkway, and that's one of the alternatives. The one-way couplet, which is number 7, down in St. George City, the furthest green line, is also an alternative being considered. And then there's a no action alternative, which is required under the EIS. So number 7, the couplet, really doesn't meet any of the intentions of what the Northern Corridor was intended to be, but there it is. That's an alternative. The Red Hills Parkway, again, does not still meet the objective of what it was. 2, 3, and 4 is at least what has been on the books since, well before my time. So Washington City, and this is not significant necessarily at the moment because it will go through its own public process, but Washington City, so the number 2 alternative is called the T-bone, the number 3 is called the UDOT, and the number 4 is called the South. Washington City has at least given their indication that the UDOT alternative is a more preferred alternative, and I'll tell you why. The difference between number 2 and number 3, mile-wise, so there are several things they look at. They look at distance, they look at impact upon the tortoise, they look at trips per day. The difference between 2 and 3 are relatively insignificant, both in mileage. There's a little bit more mileage to 3, obviously, but it's less than a mile. It's like 0.6 or something like that. I don't even know if it's even a half a mile. The differences between 3 and 4 are substantially different, both in number of miles and dissection of the tortoise habitat. Okay, the reason Washington City has at least alluded to the fact that we would prefer 3 falls on the trips per day. The trips per day for alternative 2 is almost 19,000 trips per day. sorry, 18,000 trips per day. Alternative 3 is 9,000 trips per day.
Why such a difference?
They anticipate the difference always is they calculate in mileage, a little additional mileage will drop and those type of things. But that's their numbers.
Can you say it again, Roger?
So I don't know all that goes into what their trips per day are, but they say every time we add more miles, you're going to get less trips per day.
I just want the number of trips.
So what we got, and correct me, Mike, I think it was 18, 9.
Okay, which option?
Okay, option, the T-bone option number 2 is 18,000 trips per day. Option 3, the UDOT option, is 9. Now, the reason Washington City has said we would prefer option 3 versus option 2 is because you got to remember again, Washington City is the city taking the impact. And if you don't have a significant change in miles, if you actually don't have a significant dissection of tortoise, it still accomplishes what we want to, which is the connectivity, which is what's the objective of the Northern Corridor has always been, but it lessens the impact upon our residents up there.
Roger, doesn't, I'm sorry.
I just want to finish on option 4. Was there trips per day?
Yeah, and I don't have those.
But was it closer to the 18?
It drops down like 4,000 or something like that. Because again, more miles, people are not going to take it. It parallels more of the parkway. So people just take the parkway and not move off onto the Northern Corridor. So it did drop substantially too. It still didn't drop as significant as between the options of 2 and 3.
But doesn't Route 3 also have less bridge crossings?
I don't know. That's a question Mike maybe will answer. I don't know. So yeah, I don't know that question. So they just put it on these, they just told us the tortoise dissection of the habitat, trips per day, and miles. Now what's going to happen then is the process has begun. So there'll be, scoping, there'll be public input. Like I said, Washington can say, well, we like 3, but at this point they're saying, okay, thank you. And you can just respond when you are going to respond. But I'm going to tell you, I have appreciated, I don't know how Mike and the mayor feel, but it's been a good little working group. And the BLM and all the other agencies that have been involved, because this is an interagency thing, I've been pretty impressed with their cooperation on this issue. So we'll just keep you updated. I think at this point, it's just going to start rolling through the process and it's going to be kind of out of our hands anyway. So, but I wanted to share that with you. They're really telling you that 2, 3, and 4 are the ones that meet the intent of what they've always intended anyway. And now it's just a matter of nuance. And we say, well, if you can reduce the impact and the load a little bit without significant impacts upon the public, we'll go for that. So I think with that, Mayor, let me see.
One other question for you, just backing up to Main Street. Where are we at as far as being on the timetable?
Great. Matter of fact, I talked to Mike this morning. He can add anything if I don't get it right, but I asked Mike where we were at, and I think we're still looking around June. Oh, July, okay. But again, Mike has been very, very good about holding their feet to the fire that this has got to, now we know the monsoons move on us. But for the most part, July is the deadline, and they've been really good, and they're doing a great job up there.
1st of July or end of July?
July 1 is the
substantial.
They go into penalties after July.
And they're pretty stiff penalties.
$5,000 in penalty. But we also have a $5,000 for completion. To get it done quick.
Just pay the money after.
Mayor, I think that's all.
All right, thank you. All right, we did need to move to a closed meeting to discuss item A, character or professional competence of an individual. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn and to move into the closed meeting.
Made.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. 5-minute break.